Hi everyone, it's Comics Villain and welcome to The Backstory. In comics, just like in life, more often than not, you learn about the current life of the main character and later learn about their backstory. I wanted to get out there and show people a little bit about who the current line of indie content creators are, where they came from, and what lies ahead. In this series, I've contacted each creator to get specifics on themselves to share with you today. Alright, let's dive in. On this episode, we talk about Douglas Ernst. Doug is a writer from Nevada, but was originally from just outside of Chicago, and also lived in California, Washington, D.C., Virginia, Maryland, and New Jersey. He did his undergraduate at the University of Southern California in Los Angeles. He would later go to graduate school at the American University in Washington, D.C. Doug has a campaign coming to Indiegogo on June 14th. It is known as Soul Finder Demon's Match, with art by Timothy Lim and coloring by Brett R. Smith. But honestly, who is Doug? In his own words, there are so many directions to go with that question. I'm a writer who tries to be a better man today than I was yesterday. I currently work for a newspaper in the nation's capital, although your audience most likely knows me from my YouTube channel or douglasernst.blog. I asked Doug what got him into comics and why he liked them. He says, "My oldest brother used to read Marvel comics to me when I was a kid. That's where I fell in love with characters like Spider-Man, Iron Man, and Daredevil. I literally learned to read on some of the best Marvel tales from the 1980s. I always loved The Amazing Spider-Man as a kid. That was where the bulk of my allowance money for household chores went to. There was a comic shop called Moondogs in Schaumburg, Illinois that I loved. Right across the street was a recruiting center where I eventually enlisted in the U.S. Army. I literally was looking at Captain America comics right before signing on the dotted line many years ago. Talk about the power of storytelling to influence young minds. In regards to why exactly I came to enjoy comics, there are numerous reasons. Like any good tale, the writer can transport you to a faraway place. The reader can live vicariously through his heroes. Children can imagine what they would do with superpowers and come to see the characters are supplementary role models to their parents, etc. The art, of course, is another huge factor. I'll never forget the first time I was introduced to Todd McFarlane. I remember watching adults who weren't even comic fans staring at his artwork with their jaws dropped. I asked Doug which artists or writers inspired him. He says, "If we're talking about any kind of fiction, then I'd go with Ernest Hemingway and Herman Melville. If we're solely talking about comics, then I'd say that I was affected in ways I probably don't even comprehend by Roger Stern, John Byrne, and Chris Claremont. I suppose it's cliche to acknowledge icons like Stan Lee and Steve Ditko, but it's the truth. This is an excellent list of creators, many of whom have inspired so many young kids and changed their lives. To be honest, Stan and Steve paved the way for many artists and writers today. Without them, we wouldn't have decades worth of comics, TV shows, and movies that helped so many find their passion and calling in life." How did Doug get started with writing? He says, "I have been professionally writing for various companies for roughly a decade, although I've known since I was a young man that writing was my vocation. I suppose getting paid to write took a bit longer than I wanted due to my time spent in military, college, and then graduate school." I asked Doug if he had any previous projects that he had worked on. He says, "Artist Timothy Lim was kind enough to credit me in his Black Ops property for some consulting he did with me on military questions, but I think he was probably being too nice. Most of my writing over the years hasn't been creative in nature. I did blog posts for a media watchdog, movie reviews for another website, and I've worked at a newspaper in Washington, D.C. for many years." What does the future look like for Douglas Ernst and comics? He tells us exactly that. He states, "I would love to continue with the Soul Finder universe. Father Patrick Ritter, Father Reginald Reggie Crane, and Officer Gregory Chua have a lot of adventures left in them. If Brett R. Smith and Timothy Lim's schedule allow for it, I'd like to keep the band together." Lastly, we asked Doug if he has any final words for us about his current campaign. He says, "Soul Finder Demon's Match is about a major order of exorcists, all combat veterans who take on levels of evil that most of the world cannot fathom. It launches on Indiegogo on June 14th, and the campaign will run for at least 30 days. We plan to have a pretty fast turnover in terms of getting the book out to customers. Tim and Brett have done outstanding work, and the legendary Dave Dorman did 2 covers. That's it for this episode of The Backstory. I hope you enjoyed hearing about Douglas Ernst. Let's support our indie creators. If you haven't yet, please hit the subscribe button. Help me reach that 1,000 subscriber milestone. Also like, share, and comment on what you think of Doug's new story, Soul Finder. Thank you for watching, and I will see you on the next video. Take care.